Hello again, and welcome. Michael Pizzolla here. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the Value Capping Rant. This is the 2023 Preakness Stakes edition, and I'm so happy that you're able to join me on this video while we talk about the Preakness Stakes and some other things about value capping and racing. I want to take a different tack in this video, a little slightly different format. We're going to take a quick look at the Preakness. I know there are some of you who just come around and are, clicking around YouTube videos. Who does this guy like? Who does this guy like? Fine, I'll show you that right away. I'll tell you basically my first impression of the race, looking at it with the ValueCapper software, and I'll share a little bit with you. And so for those of you who just want to know, oh, who's he like? There you go. Done. 2 minutes. Then I'll tell you a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me and how ValueCapper came about. And then rather than make up a bunch of slides for a few horses and zoom in, I'm gonna use the software kind of live as I would analyzing any race with the software, looking again not necessarily for a mortal lock cinch horse or colt in this case, but if there's any value in the race. And we'll go into some depth. And then those of you who are happy with it, goodbye, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, thank you for the time. We'll talk a little bit about the Derby and what happened. Like, hey, Pizzolla, if you're so smart, what happened in the Derby? I think you said you liked Incarnate. Yeah, I did. Show you my analysis, show you my tickets. And then there'll be a cautionary tale about coulda, woulda, shoulda. And boy, in my private coaching and all, I've seen some of this, and I expect that from people who haven't been exposed to value capping, haven't spent a long time in it. I don't know where you are in your journey with horse racing, but to me, this is one of the lessons. If you get this, can really transform your game. And finally, I got one undercard race. I've got a few in the past complaints. Hey, I tuned into your video to see what you liked in the Derby and the Triple Crown and the Preakness, and then you talked about some stupid race. Well, yeah, I've got a stupid race for you. I've got an undercard race because that's where the value is on some of these days. All right, let's get to it. Here is the lookout of ValueCapper right out of the box. Here's how it shows up, default preferences and all. Surprised? National Treasure, First Mission, Coffee with Chris Mage. Coffee with Chris may be a little bit of a surprise being in there in the top cluster. But what do we notice? First thing, I've got this, or ValueCapper does, projects it as an unpressured race. I'm going to go through all of that. We'll look at it when we go through it in depth. I did have the Kentucky Derby set up as an unpressured race. And what happened? Well, instead of horses like, or colts like Reincarnate and maybe King's Barnes and all of that being able to get an easy lead, they went out in 45 and change, 110 and change, which was very fast. They couldn't withstand it. Closers come on, including Mage. And we see Mage is in there in the arc, but not so great. Why? Well, Mage is a confirmed closer. So I've got National Treasure, First Mission, and Mage. Those are the three morning line favorites. They're in my top cluster. The top two are, now you might say, well, National Treasure is the Fulcrum. Mage is the wrong running style if everything goes according to the projection, right? And thus, therefore, National Treasure's on top and should be bet. Well, I don't know. There are only 8 colts in the race. National Treasure, the ValueCapper odds are 5-2. The ValueCapper price, which is kind of like target odds, is 7-2. I don't think I would take that. I think I'd need something more like 100% overlay, like 5-1. But I really don't see much. I want to take a look with you on the 4 Coffee with Chris. I don't think I don't think that's a very sound value play, and I'll show you the reasons why when we get into depth. So basically, unless I'm going to get 5-1 or so on National Treasure, this is an easy pass. Why? Because I'm a value capper. I'm looking for a good value play. I'm not looking to, hey, I had the winner of the Preakness. No, I don't care. And by the way, if you want that, go ahead and look. Go ahead and look. There are hundreds of videos because this is a Mortal Lock and Mage. Now, as a racing fan, yeah, sure. I want to see Mage win. I want to see a Triple Crown. I love it. It's so exciting. I got to see, and I'm very blessed, Secretariat's Belmont, in person, live, Firm's Belmont, Seattle Slew's Belmont. I mean, those were among the thrills of my my horse racing life, if you will. I was much younger then, of course. But as a racing fan, of course I'll watch. I don't even know how I would structure a recreational bet. So, okay, if that's all you tuned in for, that's what ValueCapper did with this race. Basically a pass race. I agree with the public. Don't think the price will be there for National Treasure. And if you're interested in how I came to these conclusions, stick around. I'll show you live how I use the software. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Pizzolla. I've been writing about and teaching about this great game for the past 30 plus years. I'm the author of the best-selling handicapping book, Handicapping Magic, co-author of the classic Pace Makes the Race. I'm the creator of the original online racing forum. Its current iteration is called Post Time Daily. You can find out about it at posttimedaily.com. And developer of the ValueCapper Software. You can find out more about ValueCapping and if you want about the software, but really these lessons at ValueCapper.com, they're especially the first two, the difference between ValueCapping and handicapping and why the ValueCapping framework is so valuable in today's racing. I don't care if you get the software or not. You may say I'm not a software kind of person. All of that is fine. The lessons are, I think, very valuable. And the ValueCapping framework, it's a strategy to beat the modern game. Because I don't know if you've noticed it, but the public has gotten really, really good. And this game now, to show a positive result, requires patience and discipline. Two qualities which many players of this game simply do not have and do not want. So the ValueCapping framework is to bet horses that you like, right? They've got some merit. That the public shouldn't. In other words, they've got something going on where the public understandably will overlook them, like a poor-looking last race. And preferably they should be running against vulnerable favorites. You know, a horse taking a drop in class after just winning kind of thing where the public may think, oh, that's a great looking horse. And you think, why am I the lucky one? They're going to sell me this brand new car at a lot less than, what? Wait a minute. Okay. Maybe the toughest thing is waiting for your price. I know this horse is going to win, and I don't care if he's 2-1, if he's 8-5. I'm got to wait for price. Price is so important in this game. And by the way, price is not value. Just because a horse is a price doesn't mean he's value. Heard from a lot of people. Well, we'll get to that when we talk about the Derby. And finally, let the bet make you. And this means there should be a felt sense from practice, from looking at thousands and tens of thousands of races. There comes a felt sense. Yes, this one. No, not that one. Okay, so this is not a touting video. I'm not here to tout horses. I like this one. No, rather I'm here. I want to demonstrate the principles of value capping, but those kind of may sound a little amorphous and theoretical. I'll show you how I put it into practice. Second, I'm making this video and it's a little easier now with only 8 colts entered, right? And I'm making this the Wednesday before the Preakness. It's May 17th right now, 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't have scratches. I don't have weather changes. Should be a little easier than when they scratched the also eligibles in Forte at the end, or Fort at the end in the Derby last week. Looking at the Baltimore extended forecast, thank you, National Weather Service, there's a chance for showers on Saturday. And yeah, the track comes up sloppy. There's this maybe a slight difference in running style. Software, whether it's the software that I developed, whether it's your own homegrown software, whether it's some other software, numbers, no matter how good the speed numbers, Bayer and Ragozin and Thoroughgraph, all just wonderful numbers. My master pace numbers, I think, are great, right? Obviously, because they're my babies. They're not crystal balls. They're not the kind of, look, that's got the top number, it's got to win. Game is a little more difficult than that. And potential value bets, by the way, are price dependent. So when I say I want to get 5 to 1 on the horse, or 10 to 1 on the horse, or as in the Derby, reincarnate 20 to 1 on the horse, that's it. If the horse gets bet below the price, it's not a bet. Yeah, but what if it wins, Michael? Well, then nobody's ever lost money from passing a race. Okay, so no adequate price, no bet. Let's take a closer look at the 2023 Preakness Stakes now, and I want to go over a little historical data for how the colts who have won the Preakness in the past have expended their energy, and then we'll take a live look using ValueCapper. So when we look at the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Preaknesses, we see a remarkable consistency in how these colts have expended their energy. Now, on top there is early voting, the winner of last year's Preakness. And early voting was a length and a half off at the first call, half a length off at the second call, and expended its energy 50.7%, which is a late expenditure of energy. I'm not going to go into it. You could look this up. Basically, horses will expend their energy to the second call and then to the rest of the race. This is gross oversimplification. So if horses are in the 52 and change, 53 up there, they're kind of early and greater than that, very early horses. Horses that are around the 50s like these are horses that have expended most of their energy in the latter part of the race, so late horses. Now, don't get confused with velocity and position, because as in these Preakness winners, horses can be close up to the pace and yet be expending their energy late. Another very long story, but I'm not going to get into it. Only that, notice that in the 21 Preakness, in the 20 Preakness, in the and in the 2013 Preakness and last year, the horses colts are very close up at the second call and yet are expending their energy late. Okay, and you can go through these. Beaten lates at the first call have been in these past years, and I've got a few Pimlico specials in there because that's the other race that Pimlico runs at 1 mile and 3/16. But you can see pretty close up at the first call, between 2 and 4 lengths maybe. Second call, see a lot of horses on the lead, colts, and when they come from off the pace, they're 2 or 3 lengths behind. Now, what happens if the track comes up sloppy? Well, I've got 3 Preaknesses here. Now, the one of them, which I think was Exaggerator in 2016, where he came off the pace, the others, American Pharaoh and Justify, wired the fields. And the energy expenditure, if you notice, 51.65, 51.33, 53.03, and I think that was American Pharaoh. Those are, but the 5303 looks like an outlier. The other ones are faster, or sorry, earlier expenditure by a bit than on a fast track. So if it's sloppy, hey, big surprise, Michael Pizzolla, you're a genius on a sloppy track. The horses are going to, the winners are typically up close. And in this case, we've seen 3 wire jobs, and they expend their energy earlier. Okay, this is handicapping 101. Yeah. All right, but I just want to impress on you how consistent the energy expenditure has been on fast tracks, 9.5 furlong races at Pimlico. So with that, we know that this would seem to favor a colt that can run close to the pace and expend its energy late. That's historical. What's going to happen in this year's Preakness? Come on, look over my shoulder, and we'll look at what ValueCapper has to say, if you will, looking at the race, kind of live the way I would use the software. Come on and look. Okay, so here we are at the summary screen of ValueCapper. It's deliberately very simple. I'll show you, look under the hood a little later in this video. But here's where I made that, at the beginning of this video, I showed you, National Treasure, First Mission, Coffee with Chris, Mage, and then a gap. So what am I looking at? Up here, the race is either neutral or unpressured, neutral positionally, unpressured when you put velocity in. Here is the acupressure. This is the projection of the race using both position and velocity, which is why, and some of you may be surprised, you have Mage up there close to the pace of the first call. Well, that's what velocity says. Now, from running style, well, heck, you saw that big close in the Derby. This is positionally a closer, yeah. We see National Treasure projecting as the leader at the second call. It's a need to lead horse. I don't know if it will have the lead at the first call. Don't know a lot, but okay. So that's the way ValueCapper sets it up. Now you may say, well, what happens? I can go here and set it on neutral, and guess what? You still have 3 of the top 3 morning line favorites at the top of your line. In other words, these aren't horses you like that the public shouldn't. These are horses that you like that the public also likes. And it's not a great place to find value. Well, there's got to be a price here somewhere. Let me set it up late. Even though the race projects to be unpressured, I'm going to set it late. Why? So I can get the 5 and the 6, Perform and Red Route 1 up into the arc, into the above random cluster, so I can find a price to bet. And this is not value capping. This is price. This is looking at the price horses and seeing if there's a way to shoehorn your way into it. Now, I'll tell you when this works really well. This works really well after the race, when you know who's won the race. And then you go back and say, yeah, well, if I could have, and I'll show you how that strategy of handicapping a race after the race works brilliantly. There's only one tiny little flaw in it. One small, infinitesimally small flaw. And that is, you have to bet the race before it runs. Sorry if there's smoke coming out of my ears. Okay, let's get back. So here's the early setup of the race. Again, I don't see much in the way of value. Now, I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to look at these colts, and we'll look at them one at a time, starting from the top, National Treasure. My target is 167.9. Target is my master pace number from the last race, a horse or colt that has done it before. So National Treasure just finished 4th in the Santa Anita Derby, ran a 160.4 on my numbers. Right behind it in the Sham, a 169.3. Now, that number looks a little out of whack. Why? Look at the master pace numbers. 160.4, 169.3, 160. Wow, that's a big number. And the winner of that race was Reincarnate, the colt that I bet in the Derby. So I used that race for Reincarnate. He didn't run back to it. I should not use it for National Treasure. Well, that's one possibility. And ValueCapper lets you do that, by the way. You just go here and say, let's exclude that race. Excluding that race, guess what? National Treasure stays right where it is. If you do that with a Reincarnate, it falls out. But I believe the number. There you go. Look, we're going to go back. And by the way, if you start messing around, just go back to right out of the box. I'm not an expert on trainers. Tim Yakteen, who I guess is... Anyway, this colt is back in the barn of Bob Baffert. Does that mean anything? Not to me. I'm sure there are many of you out there for whom that is. So National Treasure, in my mind, is a contender in the race. I mean, it was third, 3 3/4 lengths back against Fort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last November. So there you are. First mission, well, heck, had a little trouble, I think, at the start in its maiden win. Blew away its maiden special. Won the Lexington in a bit of a tough race, I may say. Now, if this were a regular day, I'm looking at a claiming race at Parks or something, tough race, the horse is 15-1, yeah. On the 5-2 second morning line favorite, where it had such a tough race, only ran in a grade 3, and I'm less enthusiastic. First of all, I think, this colt should be, according to my contention line and the morning line, should be second bet. And, you want to hear it? You want to hear it from me, because I don't know about these things. Or let me put it this way. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I know who Brad Cox is. I know his success in the races. And I know he's got this colt in here. It's got the top last race number for me. Yes, but the buyers say something different. Well, it's because they're different measurements. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. They measure different things. If I measure, things in millimeters, and then I measure something else, so you understand, right? One thing I will give you, Andy Beyer was very strong on Derma Sotogate. I don't have numbers to measure those because I go with incremental velocity. In other words, I need internal fractions. I couldn't get those on the Japanese horses. I don't know. Andy had a strong opinion. And by the way, that colt ran a lot better than the one that I bet in the Derby. Okay, so let's give credit where credit is due. So first mission, not going to be a price. Let's get Mage out of the way. I guess I should look at the energy expenditure first before we get to Mage. National Treasure in the 51-2, 51-2, 52-7. A little early for Pimlico. 9.5 furlongs according to historical data. If this race comes up sloppy, don't know. The colt has never run in the slop. Here, first mission, and the last two races, we see a classic Pimlico 9.5 furlong, energy expenditure 50.04, 50.76, and close up at the first two calls. So that's a really good fit. Problem? No problem. Just whether we're going to get a price. Mage, interestingly, has not expended its energy that late. Well, no, Pizzolla, you've gone off the rails. No, it hasn't. By the numbers, 51-4, 52-1, 51-7. Not in the 50s. And closed from, 14th at the first call in the Derby and 6th at the second call. 7th, the Florida Derby, where it finished second. So it would seem like Mage's style doesn't fit the historical pattern. If this race does go early, Mage is not suited for that kind of style. Then again, if it doesn't go early, well, I'll have the result I had in the Derby, which was not cashing a ticket. ValueCapper will point out any potential flaws in the morning line favorite. So Mage, wrong running style if the race goes unpressured. Now, it would have had the wrong running style for the Derby, which projected by my lights unpressured, won the race. The race didn't go unpressured. Matter of fact, shockingly, the jockeys can read the past performances, and they know, hey, I can't let these colts get away. The confidence and Reincarnate, maybe Kingsbar. I can't let them get away with an easy pace. So they pushed and they pushed, and then we saw 45 and 4, 110 and 1, which was like a second and change faster than I expected, certainly in the second call. How about this long shot? Oh, Michael, you've got a horse third. He's 20 to 1 morning line. Let's go. Well, hold on. First of all, I'm looking for, this is a champion's race. My target is 167.9. I look up and down the master pace numbers. I'm not seeing a number anywhere that fast. This colt, has earned $250,000 in 12 lifetime races. Not bad. This is a nice racehorse. By the way, I'm not going to go back and edit. I've been saying these colts. This is a gelding. Okay, let's not embarrass the animal. So second in the private Laurel, the $100,000 race, faded to fifth in the Tessio. Doesn't look like a champion. Those numbers just don't look fast enough. And this is the same thing I would look at for Red Route 1. Those numbers are kind of not up to First Missions or even National Treasures. And it's looks to be a deep closer. I could say the same about Perform. I don't have those same, I don't have a matching number. It looks like a bit of a closer. Blazing Sevens, kind of interesting to me. Third in the Bluegrass, didn't run very well in the Fountain of Youth. I'm still not seeing that class of number. Well, this is Chad Brown, Michael. Yes, I can read. Thank you. I just don't see it. Now we can play what if. Well, ValueCapper limited it to its last race. What if we open it up all the way? Well, it comes up, but it's still way down in my, I want to say my ValueCapper. We're this is the way my brain works in a race, so my analysis of the race. And finally, Chase the Chaos. Again, I don't have a great number on the colt. Any maybe surprises? Now it does run. Looks like a closer. Blazing Sevens. Don't look bad, but it pretty far back in the calls. Perform ran when it broke its maiden second race ago before winning the Tessio. Ran those last two energy expenditures were right by the Pimlico profile. So yes, this is a closer that can run. And remember, by the way, when we set it up late, boom, boom, there we have those two closers, Perform and Red Route 1. Am I betting the race that way? No, I'm betting the race based on an unpressured scenario. And the bet that I'll have is no bet. I don't think Coffee with Chris is strong enough in numbers. I think National Treasure, if it's 5 to 1 maybe, First Mission and Mage, not going to be able to bet them. I kind of I want to bet against Mage, if you will, because I think there'd be value there, because I think Mage will be overbet. So that's part of the value capping framework, preferably against a flawed favorite. And I think Mage is a little flawed by his running style. But who do I have? Who are the horses I like? Well, National Treasure. But it's not going to be the price. And price hunting. Price is not the same as value. So, that's my in-depth look at the race. That's my betting strategy. This is a pass race for me. And listen to me. This is something that my wizards, the people who are on my private forum, and I give private advice to and coaching about this game. The best thing you can do is avoid bad bets. That's what really eats up the bankroll. It's not the bad breaks. Oh, my horse got cut off and the jockey's an idiot and he ran up the behind of another horse. Okay, that happens. It's part of the game. The roulette ball bounces around. But the bad bets, forcing a bet, betting on a horse that's not an overlay because you know it's got to win. And then the other side of that equation, this horse has a shot and he's 40-1. And yes, I know he's got my worst numbers and all. Look, I've got nothing against betting 20, 30, 40-1 shots. In fact, I showed you a couple in the Derby video. But they have to have things going for them, yeah. So, okay. What happened in the Derby, Michael? You're such a genius. What happened in the Derby? Let me show you. And again, this will be a bit of a cautionary tale. I'm going to set this up because I want to make sure I got all the scratches and everything else, and fort scratching, and then the also eligible scratching and everything else. The Derby came up by my lights as an unpressured race. And when you look at acupressure, Mage and Reincarnate were out there. Now, Mage didn't go out. Projects early in the Preakness. And then I saw Reincarnate and Verify. Now, Mage kind of, hangs around there. I did have Mage in the top cluster, but that's a big cluster. That's why it's not it was a pass for me because I had like 12 horses, colts, above random. Now, here, and so you see the 7 on top of the gap and all of the rest. Here's where we can apply the wisdom of hindsight. 20/20 vision, as they say. You see the sham, which Reincarnate won? That 158 sticks out as really high. If I exclude that race, Reincarnate now is just another one in the mix. Makes Mage look better. Did I do that before the race? No. Could I have? Sure. But I didn't. And once again, I've tried. But when I go to buy a ticket on a horse race, if the race is already run, they won't sell me that ticket. Now, let's take it back. Let's go back to default. This is what I was looking at. And by the way, it's not a race I would get involved in. If you have enough numbers, and you have enough ratings, and you have enough lookouts at the race, you can reason your way back to just about any horse that wins. Okay? This is the woulda, coulda, shoulda mentality. Now, I'm very fond of my PBS numbers and PPF numbers, and they're incorporated into the ValueCapper line. Do I use them as a standalone? No. Why? They don't stand up to that kind of scrutiny over the long term. Now, in certain kinds of races, yeah, they're more effective than others. But my line, the ValueCapper line, by database runs over hundreds of thousands of races, is more accurate or more in alignment with how the races finish. If you were prescient enough to sort the race by PBS, which is not the preferred, even if you're in that mindset, who are the top PBS horses in the Derby? Mandarin Hero, Mage, and Two Fields. Whoa, I got the exact. Okay. So I heard that. And I heard that from some of my clients. Your PBS numbers did great. I wouldn't embarrass them by pointing out that this was pointed out after the race, or did you bet that? I'm not going to do that. I've heard from other people who named, I don't know, 14 of the colts in the Derby and said, they're going to come from here, and I'm going to box 9 horses here. And it's like, okay. And then after the race, see, this exactly came out exactly as I said it would. You're just fooling yourself. You got to make your shot. Now, by the way, I'm not proud of take that. I knew going in, this Derby was a recreational bet for me. I made that recreational bet. Because of personal circumstances, I made it way in advance. Let me show you. So, in the Derby, you ever wonder what the word prediction means? Yeah, it's what's going to happen in the future. The best thing maybe I got out of my parochial school education was having to study Latin. Prediction, predicere, to say, dicere, to say. Like, que se dice? Hey, Guido, que se dice? Long time, Mimo, how you doing? Pre means before, or pre, right? Predicere means to say before, not after. After the race, we're all geniuses. So I had early pace projection. Now I did, and this is the slide from my Derby presentation. Where's the 8? Mage, who only lost to Fort by a length in the Florida Derby. I wondered out loud. It was one of those unknowns in the race that made me pass the race as a primary bet. And I said, for all these reasons in question, not a primary bet for me. Did I bet the race? So, yes, I intend to have a secondary win bet on the 7 Reincarnate. And here's my ticket. I made it 2 days in advance on the Thursday before the Derby. Now, why? Well, personal stuff. I looked like a family member might have to go in the hospital the next day. I wanted to have my schedule clear, but I wanted to have a bet. So here's my bet. It lost. I said I'd box it with Kingsbarns. Here's a little exacta box with Kingsbarns and Reincarnate. Lost. Up the track. Again, made 2 days in advance of the Derby. My point is, you go by what you think and what you sense before. And if you're betting value horses, you can't. Well, you can. You can expect as high a win percentage as you want. I'm going to hit 90% of my races. Well, that's wonderful. If you happen to be the Buddha or another enlightened sage. But for the most part, the morning line or the tote favorite wins more than the tote second favorite, then the third, then the fourth. The only other line I've seen that has that level of stair-step predictability is the ValueCapper line, where the top choice, the top odds, wins more than the second, more to the third, all the way down to like 14 places. So, if you want to play coulda, woulda, shoulda, like as I showed you, you can. You can reason back to why Mage and 2 fills was an absolute lock. I guess, let's go back. Here's the Derby again. And you might say, well, the heck kind of call is that? You see 2 fills? Well, 2 fills was limited to its last race in the Derby. If you were prescient enough to open the form cycle all the way, now 2 fills was way on top. And you might say, yeah, 10-1, tremendous price on that horse, and so forth. You can spend so much time making these call after call after calls in a race where you have all of these horses above random. In other words, you have too many, kind of an old-timers phrase, too many contenders in the race. Yeah. Why not stick with simple races? Now, the Preakness is pretty simple. Problem is, there's not much value in it. What do I mean by a simple and obvious race? Well, take a look at some of the undercards Perhaps you'll find one there. By my lights, look at the Louisiana 4th race. Now, we get up to the nosebleed area of the Triple Crown races with millions of dollars in purse money. This is a $5,000 maiden claimer at Louisiana. So what caught my eye? Well, I've only got 5 of these little fillies running, and my odds line is very smooth. There are no big gaps in them. And I've got one of these lovely little fillies who's a horse I like, if you will, is second on my line, that the public shouldn't. My contention line is the shouldn't, right? 10-1. The morning line maker agrees, 10-1. My target is 5-1, meaning that if the public does what the morning line maker and my contention line does, should be an overlay. That's for people betting in advance. You can look at the board. Oh, they found this filly, 7-2, no bet. Ooh, they're letting it go at 8-1? Yeah, sure, bet. Third start off, a layoff, and then you look at the past performances. Oh, Michael, what are you kidding? They finished 8 by 12.5, 6 by 5 3/4, and then before that 5 by 12, 10 by 12. Hey, the target in this race, remember we did the target when we looked at the Preakness, is 136.1. That's a low number. And that's on the 6. 136.1. Now, this lovely little filly, 7 by 11, 7 by 15. In other words, there are no world beaters in this race. Beau is on a layoff. And those numbers are, right in there. But again, look at those finishes. This is the morning line favorite, 7 by 11, 8 by 16, 5 by 13. How about the second morning line or the third morning line favorite? Technically, numbers aren't bad for this race. Again, no great finishes. So this is why I'm not so concerned about those finishes. I noticed in the second race back, it made a nice little move from the second call to the end. Then showed a little early speed in its last race. Now, is this a champion? No. But at 7 or 8-1, am I betting it? Yeah, absolutely. That's where I think I might find some value in the undercards. Now, again, this is Wednesday morning, 7:30 in the morning before the Preakness. I only have like 2 or 3 complete other cards because the races don't go off for a few days. So I haven't looked at every undercard race, but here's one more like the kind of race I would bet. So that's it for this value capping rant. I hope you enjoyed that. Those of you who went right all the way to the end. National Treasure, 5-6-1. Yeah. As a prime bet, no. I don't see a real value opportunity in the Preakness. I get 6, 7, 8-1 on the 4-horse in the Louisiana 4th, sure. As an example of kind of the opposite kind of race that I think has some value potential, even though it's not a premier race, right? But I hope you enjoyed watching me go live, if you will, how I look at the race without making fancy slides and zooming in and all of that, because I don't do that, right? This is just to present to you. But what you saw is how I look at the race with ValueCapper. And as much as I want to find a value bet, as much as the fan in me wants to bet the Preakness, I don't find a real solid bet. Again, National Treasure. I want 5-6-1, and I hope you'll take to heart the woulda, coulda, shoulda, looking at things after the race when you know who won, and then reasoning back to it. You can ask me how I know how dangerous this is. Not dangerous. Well, not healthy. I spent years of my life doing that, and years of my horse racing life doing that. Well, if I had only gone by the late fraction in this race or whatever, and then let me try it on the next race. Oh, well, it was late fraction plus APV, and well, they'll go average purse value on the next one. I'd have a different lookout. I'm a lot older now, hopefully a little wiser. And I just want to warn you about the dangers of that approach, because after the race, we're all geniuses. ValueCapper helps you focus in, and the value capping framework on horses you like that the public shouldn't, so you could relax. Preferably running against a flawed favorite. Most important, wait for your price. Relax, sit back, have a cup of tea. Wait for your price. Let the bet make you. Don't bet unless you have that fail-safe. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your encouragement and support. The kids tell me I should ask you to, what is it again? Like the video and subscribe. Whatever. Thanks so much. Good luck at the Preakness, at the races, and always. And until next time, this is Michael Pizzolla saying, let the bet make you. See you soon.